The class was told to forge a blade. The human girl sharpened a piece of bone. According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, the Galactic Forge Academy's emergency protocols activated when materials analysis showed Emma Johnson working with something that registered as biologically impossible weapon-grade substance. Instructor Kaltas froze mid-sentence, his lecture about proper stellar titanium tempering dying as crimson warning lights bathed the forge chamber. His primary manipulator appendages twitched toward the emergency containment controls, while his secondary set reached for the comm panel. Around the vast circular workspace, 23 alien students looked up from their plasma forges, quantum hammers, and molecular anvils, all except the human in Station 17, who continued methodically scraping something pale and curved against a rough stone. "Johnson, step away from your workstation immediately." Kaltas's translator kept his voice level, but his dermal chromatophores flickered the purple of genuine alarm. "What material are you working with?" Emma looked up, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear with her free hand. "Oh, this? It's just a bone. Found it in the cafeteria after lunch. Pretty sure it's from that roasted bird thing they served yesterday." She held up a piece of what appeared to be a femur, maybe 15 centimeters long, one end worked down to a wicked point. "Assignment was to forge a blade, right?" "I'm forging a blade." The materials scanner above her station shrieked again, its quantum sensors struggling to categorize what they were detecting. Biological matter, calcium phosphate, collagen matrix, density readings that violated 3 separate principles of organic decomposition, edge geometry that matched military-grade cutting implements, sharpness measurements that exceeded station regulation limits. This wasn't possible. This was cafeteria waste being transformed into something that registered as a weapon. "That is not forging," Kaltas said, moving closer while keeping a respectful distance from the scanner's threat radius. "Forging requires heat, pressure, molecular restructuring through plasma infusion." "Does it, though?" Emma tilted her head, genuinely curious rather than argumentative. She ran her thumb along the bone's edge. Kaltas flinched, expecting blood, but she just nodded approvingly. "I mean, I'm shaping material into a blade. Seems like forging to me, just, without all the fancy laser show." At Station 9, Zara's crystalline neural cluster pulsed with confusion. She'd spent 3 days carefully layering star metal in the Academy's most advanced plasma forge, following procedures refined over millennia. Her blade in progress sat cooling in its quantum matrix, still requiring at least another day of molecular alignment before the first edge could be established. The human had started 20 minutes ago with garbage. "Security to Forge Chamber 7. Kaltas kept his voice steady while his chromatophores betrayed his panic. "Possible biological warfare material, unknown human activity, requesting immediate containment assessment." "Biological warfare?" Emma laughed, the sound echoing oddly in the suddenly tense chamber. "It's a chicken bone, or whatever that bird was. You guys served it for lunch." Station Commander R. Hill materialized through the chamber entrance 90 seconds later, which had to be a personal speed record. His combat carapace gleamed under the forge lights, and his security detail fanned out behind him with containment equipment at ready. He was built like a tank, led security for the entire Academy station, and his presence meant someone thought there was a genuine threat. "Report," he barked. Kaltas gestured toward Emma's station, where the materials scanner continued its confused alarming. "The human student is working with organic matter that registers as weapon-grade material. Sensors indicate edge sharpness exceeding military specifications. Density readings are impossible for biological waste. She claims it's a bone from lunch," Emma finished, holding it up helpfully. "Seriously, does everyone here have to panic about everything? It's just basic tool making." Rahil's combat sensors swept over the bone, and Kael'thas watched his superior's dermal plating shift through 3 colors of confusion. That material should not hold that edge geometry, Rahil said slowly. Organic calcium structures lack the molecular cohesion for... He paused. How did you achieve this? I sharpened it, Emma demonstrated, scraping the bone against her stone with a practiced motion that somehow found angles Kael'thas's trained eyes couldn't quite track. Find the grain, work with the material's natural structure, take off a little at a time. Pretty straightforward. Around the chamber, students abandoned their own projects to watch. Vexathul, whose family had produced master weaponsmiths for 7 generations, stared at his own carefully designed plasma-forged blade, 3 days of precision work, then at the piece of cafeteria waste in the human's hand. His neck frill flattened in disbelief. This is the Galactic Forge Academy, Kael'thas said, fighting to keep his instructional composure. We train weaponsmiths for the entire galactic defense network. Our techniques represent thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. You cannot simply... He struggled for words. You cannot make a functional blade from garbage using a rock. Emma glanced at her bone, then at him, eyebrows raised. I literally just did, though. Want to test it? The materials scanner shrieked again, its readings climbing higher. The bone blade's edge had somehow gotten sharper in the last 30 seconds. Rahil's combat computer was feeding him threat assessments, and Kael'thas could see his superior running tactical scenarios. A human, in their most advanced Forge Academy, making weapons from organic waste, weapons that violated known materials science, weapons that registered as more dangerous than regulation military equipment. Everyone else, Rahil announced, his command voice cutting through the murmuring students. Continue with your assigned projects. Johnson, you're coming with me for a full materials assessment. Bring your... He paused, searching for words. Bring your bone. Emma shrugged, tucking her stone into one pocket and her bone blade into another. Sure, but I'm telling you, it's really not that complicated. People back home have been doing this for literally forever. As she walked past Zara's station, the alien student got her first close look at the bone blade's edge. Her neural cluster flashed bright cyan, the color of academic fascination mixed with existential horror. That edge was perfect, molecularly aligned, sharper than anything Zara had managed with 3 days of advanced plasma forging. The human had made it in 20 minutes with cafeteria garbage and a rock. The materials analysis laboratory occupied an entire wing of the Academy Station's security sector, equipped with quantum scanners, molecular analyzers, and containment fields designed to safely examine everything from unstable plasma cores to collapsed star fragments. Rahil watched through reinforced observation glass as 3 of his best technicians circled Emma's bone blade like it might explode. It sat on the examination platform, innocuous and pale, looking exactly like what it was, a piece of organic waste from the station cafeteria. The scanners told a different story. Edge sharpness exceeds military-grade plasma blades by 17%, reported technician Zelia, her sensor appendages quivering with confusion. Molecular structure shows organization patterns consistent with advanced nano-forging, but there's no evidence of heat treatment, plasma infusion, or quantum manipulation. Emma leaned against the observation wall, arms crossed, watching the examination with bemused patience. It's a sharpened bone. This really doesn't need to be this complicated. Your sharpened bone violates 4 fundamental principles of materials science, Rahil said flatly. Organic calcium phosphate structures cannot maintain edge geometry at this scale. The collagen matrix should have degraded under the stress of sharpening. The density readings indicate compression that requires equipment we don't have in this sector. He turned to face her directly. Explain your process. I found a bone. I found a rough rock. I scraped the bone against the rock until it got sharp. Emma spread her hands. That's the whole process. What else is there? Zelia looked up from her scanners. Commander, the material is still changing. The edge is becoming more refined even without active manipulation. That's impossible, R. Hill stated. Yeah, well, my scanner doesn't lie, sir. Zilia adjusted her settings, confused readings multiplying across her display. The bone's internal structure is somehow optimizing itself for edge retention. It's like it's, I don't know, remembering what it's supposed to be doing. Emma perked up. Oh, that's actually kind of accurate. Bone is living tissue, right? Or was. It has grain, structure, stress patterns from when it was part of something alive. You work with that structure instead of fighting it. She mimed the sharpening motion. Find where it naturally wants to compress, where the calcium layers align, follow the grain inward. The material does most of the work, if you let it. Rahil's tactical computer was still struggling to categorize this information. You're suggesting the organic matter retains structural memory after death? I'm suggesting that if you actually pay attention to what you're working with, instead of just blasting it with plasma until it does what you want, you get better results. Emma shrugged. Back home, we figured this out like 100,000 years ago, before we had plasma forges, or electricity, or, metal. The laboratory fell silent except for the soft humming of scanners. Before you had metal, Rahil repeated slowly. Yeah, stone, bone, wood. That's what we had to work with for most of human history, so we got really, really good at it. Emma gestured at the bone blade. This is literally the oldest technology my species has. It's older than language, older than agriculture. We were making bone tools before we figured out fire. Zalia's sensor appendages had gone completely still. Your species developed tool-making before developing heat manipulation? Well, we needed tools to make better fire, didn't we? Emma laughed. Can't exactly rub sticks together efficiently without knowing how to sharpen a stick first. Rahil felt his tactical training colliding with information that refused to fit into any existing framework. Every species in the galactic community had followed roughly the same technological progression. Heat manipulation, then metallurgy, then plasma sciences, then quantum forging. The idea of a species making weapons before they could control fire was... Actually, it explained several disturbing things about human combat doctrine that he'd been reviewing lately. The implications, he said carefully, are significant. Are they? Emma looked genuinely puzzled. It's just basic crafting. Give me any material and enough time, I can probably turn it into something useful. That's not special, that's just being human. Rahil's calm chirped. Kael'thas's identifier appeared on his display along with a priority flag. Commander, I need to report something, the instructor said without preamble. I demonstrated the human's technique to the class. Zara attempted to replicate the method with her plasma-forged blade. There was a pause filled with what sounded like academic devastation. Her blade shattered during the comparison test. The bone blade cut through it like it wasn't there. Rahil closed his eyes briefly. Understood. Document. Everything. I'm contacting the Forge Council. They're already on their way, sir, Master Zelax himself. He'll be here within the hour. Of course he was. When weapons technology potentially obsoleted itself, the galaxy's foremost Forge Master would want to see it personally. Forge Master Zelax had dedicated 300 years to the study of weaponsmithing. He'd trained under the last of the old masters, had personally redesigned the plasma forge systems used across 17 sectors, and his treatise on quantum molecular blade optimization was required reading at every Forge Academy in the known galaxy. He'd thought he'd seen everything there was to see in his field. Then he saw the bone. This reading cannot be accurate, he said, his aged vocal membranes producing harmonics of pure academic denial. Scan it again. Kael'thas operated the scanner himself, triple-checking the calibration. Same results, Master. Edge geometry exceeds military specifications, structural integrity beyond manufactured plasma blades, material density impossible for organic calcium phosphate. He hesitated. And it was made in approximately 20 minutes using a rock. Zilax's dermal patterns, faded with age but still expressing emotion, flickered through a spectrum of colors that indicated his worldview was actively cracking. He'd traveled 3 systems to see this, canceling symposiums and research projects because the initial reports had seemed too absurd to be real. They were real. Emma stood near her original workstation in Forge Chamber 7, having been escorted back for the demonstration. Around her, students had abandoned any pretense of working on their own projects. Zara clutched the broken remains of her plasma-forged blade, her neural cluster pulsing with colors that suggested she was reconsidering everything she'd learned. Vexthul had actually requested permission to discard his 3 days of carefully executed work and start over with Emma's method, a request Kael'thas had denied pending this evaluation. "Show me," Zilax commanded. Emma picked up another bone. She'd apparently brought several from the cafeteria, and her rock. "Okay, so first thing is you have to actually look at what you're working with. Not just see it, but understand it." She ran her fingers along the bone's surface. Bone isn't uniform. It has layers, grain, density variations. It grew as part of a living thing, which means it has structural logic built into it. She positioned the bone against the rock at an angle that seemed random to Zilax's trained eye. Then she scraped. The motion was smooth, practiced, following curves that his instruments couldn't quite measure. "You're not imposing force," he observed, moving closer despite himself. "You're following existing stress patterns." "Exactly," Emma grinned, clearly pleased that someone was getting it. "See, you guys try to force materials to do what you want through heat and pressure. You're fighting them into submission. I'm just asking the bone what it wants to be and helping it get there." "Materials do not have preferences," Zilax stated, but his voice carried less certainty than it had 30 seconds ago. "Don't they, though?" Emma paused her work, holding up the partially shaped bone. The edge was already visible, already sharp enough to catch the light. This was part of a living creature. It handled stress, bore weight, flexed without breaking. All that information is still in here. The calcium grain, the collagen structure, the way it naturally compresses under force. Why would I ignore all that useful information? Zilax moved closer, his aged sensors focusing on the bone's developing edge. She was right. The material wasn't being forced into a new configuration. It was being guided to reveal a configuration that had always existed within its structure, like finding a sculpture hidden in stone by removing everything that wasn't the sculpture. The concept was philosophically beautiful and technically horrifying. "In all my years of forge mastery," he said slowly, "I have based my work on the principle that we must overcome material limitations through technology. Heat to reshape, pressure to compress, plasma to infuse, quantum manipulation to optimize at the molecular level." He watched Emma work, each scrape of stone against bone producing subtle changes that his 3 centuries of experience told him shouldn't be possible. "You're suggesting this is wrong." "Not wrong." Emma kept sharpening, the bone's edge becoming more defined with each pass. "Just incomplete? You're so focused on high-tech solutions that you forgot about working with the material instead of against it." "We have not forgotten. We never learned." Zilax's admission hurt, but intellectual honesty demanded it. "Our species developed plasma manipulation early in our evolution. We achieved spaceflight before we perfected metallurgy. We never had a—" He struggled with the concept. "A primitive tool-making phase." "Seriously?" Emma looked up, genuinely surprised. "Huh, that explains a lot, actually." She resumed her work, the scraping sound oddly meditative in the tense chamber. "Humans spent about 200,000 years making tools before we figured out smelting. Stone tools, bone tools, wooden tools, whatever we could find, we learned to shape. It's literally what made us human. We're persistently, aggressively good at turning raw materials into useful objects." Zara's neural cluster flashed sudden comprehension, colors shifting rapidly. "Your species' intelligence evolved specifically to support tool-making?" Other way around, probably. Tool-making drove the intelligence evolution. Smarter humans made better tools. Better tools meant more successful humans. Successful humans had smarter kids. Feedback loop. Emma held up her bone blade, checking the edge against the light. It gleamed with molecular precision. Give us any material and enough time, we'll figure out how to make it useful. It's kind of our thing. Zilax took the finished bone blade and his primary manipulator, examining it with 300 years of expertise. The edge was perfect, molecularly aligned without molecular manipulation, structurally optimized without structural engineering. A masterwork created with technology that predated his species' first written language by epochs. "Test it," he said, his voice barely audible. He gestured to the demonstration forge. Standard durability assessment. Kael'thas activated the testing rig, placing Zilax's own demonstration blade, a plasma-forged masterpiece he'd crafted specifically for teaching purposes, in the resistance clamp. The bone blade went into the active clamp. Standard test protocol. Both blades brought together edge to edge with calibrated force, increasing until one failed. The plasma-forged blade shattered. The sound was like breaking glass, sharp and final. Fragments of star-core titanium scattered across the testing platform, glittering under the forge lights. The bone blade remained intact, its edge unmarred. Zilax's dermal patterns went completely white, the color of absolute shock. That blade had withstood force equivalent to orbital bombardment during its certification tests. It was made from star-core metals, plasma-tempered for 3 solid days, quantum-optimized at the molecular level. It represented the pinnacle of forge technology developed over thousands of years of refinement. A piece of cafeteria bone had destroyed it. Okay, that's probably because the bone has flexibility the metal doesn't, Emma offered quickly, seeing the room's reaction. She looked genuinely concerned about causing distress. It's not necessarily stronger, it's just differently strong. The crystalline structure of your blade is rigid, which makes it vulnerable to certain stress patterns that the bone's organic matrix can absorb and distribute. It cut through star-core titanium. Zilax's voice came out as barely a whisper. That should not be possible according to every principle of materials science I know. Back home, we've been making bone tools for 100,000 years, maybe more. Emma shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. We've had time to figure out what works. Trial and error across thousands of generations. The knowledge just accumulated. The forge chamber's main computer chimed, drawing Kael'thas's attention. He read the display, his chromatophores flickering with new alarm. Master, the Council computers are flagging multiple paradigm violations. Forge theory fundamentals, materials science principles, weapons certification standards. The bone blade's existence contradicts 17 separate foundational assumptions in our database. Because those assumptions were wrong. Zilax set down the bone blade carefully, reverently, like it was a religious artifact. Which, in a way, it was, proof that everything he'd built his life around was incomplete. We built an entire technological civilization on the principle that materials must be forced into compliance through applied energy. We never considered that materials might have intrinsic properties worth cooperating with. He looked at Emma, really looked at her, seeing past the young human to the 2 million years of evolutionary pressure that had shaped her species into tool makers. Your species discovered this before you had fire. Well, yeah. How else would we make tools to create better fire? Emma laughed, the sound breaking some of the tension. You can't bootstrap technology from nothing. You start with what you have, rocks, bones, sticks, and work from there. Then you use those tools to make better tools, and those to make even better ones. It's iterative. Vexthul raised a manipulator tentatively. Master Zilax, if the human method is demonstrably superior, should we abandon plasma forging entirely? No. Zilax's response was immediate and firm, his teaching instincts overriding his existential crisis. We should integrate. Human intuitive material understanding combined with our plasma forging technology could produce weapons beyond anything we've conceived. We're not replacing knowledge, we're adding to it. He turned to Arhill, who'd been observing from the chamber entrance with an expression of grim calculation. Commander, I'm recommending immediate curriculum revision. Human students must be allowed to work with any available materials using their traditional techniques. All students should receive training in intuitive material assessment. Arhill nodded slowly, his tactical computer probably running 1,000 scenarios. I'll need to file reports with the Defense Council. If humans can weaponize organic waste this effectively with no equipment. We can weaponize pretty much anything, Emma interrupted cheerfully, then seemed to realize that might not be reassuring. I mean, not in a threatening way. It's just rocks, bones, sticks, metal, plastic, whatever you have available. It's not about the material, it's about understanding what you can do with it. Pattern recognition and applied physics. The implications hung in the air like plasma smoke. Every species in the galactic community had assumed that weapon-making capability was limited by technological advancement and access to specific materials. That you needed plasma forges and quantum manipulators and rare metals to create military-grade equipment. Humans had just proved you needed a rock and pattern recognition. Humans had just proved that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't technology, it was understanding. I need to contact the Full Forge Council immediately, Zillax said, his voice steadier now as he shifted into crisis management mode. This changes everything about weapons manufacturing, military logistics, resource dependencies, civilian defense capabilities. He paused, looking at Emma. How many humans possess this level of skill? I mean, most of us? It's pretty basic stuff. Emma picked up her rock again, turning it over in her hands. There are people back home who can make functional blades from flint, obsidian, antler, bone, you name it. Some of them can do it in under 5 minutes with materials they just found on the ground. I'm honestly not that good at it. This is just hobby-level skill for me. I learned from videos and some weekend workshops. Hobby-level. The bone blade that had shattered Zillax's masterpiece was hobby-level human crafting skill. Weekend workshop material. Kael'thas felt his educational paradigms collapsing in real time. 300 years of teaching weaponsmithing, countless students trained in advanced plasma forging techniques, a career built on passing down accumulated knowledge, and a human with hobby-level skills had obsoleted his expertise in 20 minutes. We need to reschedule the entire curriculum, he said weakly. We need to reschedule galactic warfare doctrine, Arhill corrected grimly, already composing reports in his tactical interface. Emma glanced between them, looking genuinely confused by the escalating panic. Guys, it's really not that serious. It's just making things sharp. People have been doing it forever. It's not some special human superpower. It's just knowledge that accumulated over time. But Zillax knew better. He'd spent 3 centuries studying weapon making, and he understood the implications even if the young human didn't. A species that could weaponize anything wasn't just dangerous, they were fundamentally unstoppable. You couldn't disarm humans by controlling weapons-grade materials because humans didn't need weapons-grade materials. You couldn't contain human military capability by restricting forge technology because humans had been making weapons before forge technology existed. You couldn't limit human weapon development because they operated on principles of material understanding that existed independent of manufacturing infrastructure. You couldn't prepare for humans because they operated on principles that predated civilizational thinking entirely. Continue your work, he said to Emma, watching her pick up another bone. Show me everything your technique can accomplish. I want to understand the full scope of this methodology. Emma brightened, clearly happy to share knowledge. Oh, awesome! So the principles apply to basically any material with structural grain. Bone is great because of the collagen matrix, but stone is even more interesting, especially volcanic glass. Obsidian can get sharper than surgical steel at the molecular level. and wood has directional grain that you can work with or against depending on what you need. Then there's antler, which is like bone but denser and more uniform, and she continued explaining, enthusiasm building. While Zilax listened and felt the weight of 300 years of expertise becoming simultaneously obsolete and vitally necessary, they would need to learn from the humans. All of them would need to learn, not to replace their knowledge, but to complete it. And somewhere in the back of his mind, past the academic crisis and the paradigm collapse, Zilax felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, genuine excitement about his field. There was so much to learn, so much they'd missed. Emma was still talking, demonstrating scraping techniques on different materials, explaining grain structure and stress patterns with the casual competence of someone who'd never questioned whether this knowledge was special. The universe's rules hadn't changed, but their understanding of those rules had been catastrophically incomplete, and a human with cafeteria waste and a rock had just proved it. 3 days later, Emma sat in what had been redesignated as Forge Chamber 7, Integrated Materials Research Facility. The plasma forges remained, but new sections had been added. Workbenches with stone, bone, and wood samples, areas designated for traditional technique demonstration, and a small crowd of students from multiple academies who'd requested immediate transfers into her newly created courses. Zara worked beside her, attempting to replicate the bone sharpening technique. Her first 3 attempts had ended in fragments and frustration. Her 4th attempt was showing promise. "Feel the grain," Emma coached, watching Zara's movements. "Don't force it. Ask the material where it wants to compress." "Materials don't have preferences," Zara said, but without conviction. She'd been saying it for 3 days like a mantra she no longer believed. Keep telling yourself that while you're making something that violates materials science. Emma grinned. "The bone knows what it is. You just have to listen." Zara's neck scrape produced a clean edge. Her neural cluster flashed surprised cyan. I felt it. The resistance changed. "That's it. That's the grain alignment." Emma leaned closer. "Now follow that line. Let the material guide you." Across the chamber, Vex Thule had successfully created his first complete bone blade. He held it up to the light, his neck frill fully extended in pride. "Instructor Kael'thas, assessment please." Kael'thas approached, scanner in hand, though Emma noticed he checked the blade by eye first now, a technique she'd taught him. "Edge geometry excellent, grain alignment strong. This is serviceable work, Vex Thule. Well done." 3 hours versus 3 days, Vex Thule said quietly, and it tested sharper than my plasma-forged blade. "Different methodologies serve different purposes," Kael'thas said, his standard response now. Emma had helped him develop it. Plasma forging creates durability and allows exotic material properties. Traditional techniques create immediate results with available materials. Both have value. The chamber door opened, admitting Zilax and another human Emma didn't recognize, male, mid-20s, carrying a professional-looking toolkit. "Johnson, this is Marcus Chen from the Engineering Academy," Zilax introduced. "He specializes in advanced stoneworking techniques. I've asked him to guest lecture on lithic technology." "Marcus," Emma stood, wiping bone dust from her hands. "What's your specialty?" "Obsidian blade making primarily, some flint work." Marcus set down his toolkit, revealing carefully wrapped bundles. "Heard you caused a paradigm collapse with bone tools. Thought I'd add to the educational revolution. Did you bring samples?" Emma's eyes lit up. 5 kilos of prime napping-grade obsidian from Earth. Marcus unwrapped one bundle, revealing glossy black volcanic glass. "Plus some decent flint and quartzite. Figured if we're teaching aliens about primitive tech, we should use the good stuff." Zara approached cautiously, her sensors examining the obsidian. "This material appears extremely fragile. How can it be useful for weapons?" "Fragile is relative." Marcus selected a piece, produced a leather pad and what looked like an antler tine, positioned the obsidian carefully, and struck with practiced precision. A razor-thin flake separated from the core, its edge nearly invisible. Obsidian can be sharper than any metal blade at the molecular level. It's brittle, yes, but for cutting, nothing beats it. He held up the flake. This could slice through your standard-issue combat armor like it wasn't there. Kael'thas's chromatophores flickered alarm. That's a significant security concern. That's basic flint-knapping technique, Marcus corrected calmly. Humans have been doing this for 200,000 years minimum. Every continent, every climate zone, wherever we found suitable stone. This is universal human knowledge. He smiled. Your security concerns are about 200 millennia too late, instructor. Rahil, who'd apparently decided to make observing Emma's classes a regular duty, made notes on his tactical display. Emma could practically see him updating threat assessments again. I can demonstrate integration techniques, Emma offered, taking one of Marcus's obsidian flakes. Stone blade, bone or wood handle, sinew binding. It's a classic combination that works incredibly well. Some of the oldest composite tools we've found on Earth use this exact design. How old? Zilax asked. 40, 50,000 years for the sophisticated examples, but simpler versions probably go back way further. Emma examined the flake, checking its edge. This is old technology, but it works. Over the next 2 hours, Forge Chamber 7 filled with new sounds. Stone-on-stone percussion, the scrape of bone on rock, the quiet concentration of students learning techniques that predated their civilizations. Alien students who'd mastered plasma temperature curves now learned to read stone fracture patterns by touch. Species who'd perfected quantum molecular alignment practiced judging material stress by feel. Zara successfully completed her first bone blade. Vexithal moved on to trying flint knapping, producing a usable flake on his 6th attempt. Students clustered around Marcus's workstation, watching him create obsidian blades with casual expertise that made 300 years of forge mastery look overcomplicated. The key insight, Zilax said quietly to Kael'thas, watching the chamber's activity, is that we confused advancement with understanding. We developed more powerful tools, but never learned the fundamental principles the humans discovered through direct material interaction. 2 million years of direct material interaction, Kael'thas corrected. That's not a knowledge gap, that's a missing evolutionary epoch, which we're now learning in compressed time. Zilax's patterns flickered with something like satisfaction. The Defense Council approved full integration protocols this morning. Human material manipulation techniques are now part of standard Forge curriculum across all academies. This chamber is the pilot program. That's a significant change. That's a necessary adaptation. Zilax watched Emma help another student with grain alignment. We nearly missed this, Kael'thas. If Emma had simply followed our standard procedures, we'd never have known what we were missing. We'd have turned her into another competent plasma forge technician and lost access to 2 million years of evolutionary expertise. Lucky she brought cafeteria bones to class. Lucky she thought to use them. Zilax's patterns shifted to amused colors, though I suspect lucky isn't quite accurate. I think humans naturally see tool-making potential in everything. It's fundamental to how their cognition works. Emma was now demonstrating edge maintenance, how to touch up a blade's sharpness in the field with minimal tools. Students took notes, asked questions, practiced the techniques themselves. The enthusiasm was palpable in a way Kael'thas had never seen in 30 years of teaching plasma forging. They're engaged, he observed. Because it's tangible, Zilax agreed. Plasma forging is abstract. Adjust settings, wait for cycles, trust the equipment. This is immediate. Do thing, see result, feel material change under your hands. Our students' brains respond to that directness. Human brains evolved for it. And we're borrowing their evolutionary advantages, Zilax finished, which is exactly what a healthy civilization should do, learn from those who know things we don't. The session continued until the chamber's scheduled closure. Students left carrying their newly made tools, bone blades, stone flakes, composite pieces that combine traditional techniques with modern materials. They compared their work, discussed techniques, made plans to practice. Emma cleaned her workstation, setting aside promising bone fragments for future use. Marcus packed his obsidian carefully, though he'd left several pieces for the chamber's permanent collection. "You started something," Marcus said to Emma as they walked toward the exit together. "We started something," Emma corrected. "You're here teaching too." "Fair point." Marcus adjusted his toolkit. "How long do you think before someone tries to plasma forge an obsidian blade?" Vexthul already asked Zilax about it this morning. "And?" "They're scheduling forge time next week, going to try plasma bonding the molecular structure while maintaining the stone's natural fracture properties." Emma grinned. "If it works, it might create something with obsidian's sharpness and star metal's durability." "That would be insane." "That would be awesome," Emma corrected. "Humans have always been good at iteration. Take what works, make it better, see what happens. Stone to metal to alloys to plasma-forged materials. It's the same progression we've always followed." They reached the chamber exit where Kael'thas was reviewing the day's documentation. He looked up as they approached. "Productive session," he said. 17 students achieved functional edges on their first attempts.